This video is brought to you by Sportland, quality, integrity, and tradition. So we have a call on a walk-in cooler that has a fan motor not working, but it's more than that because the evaporator coil is completely iced up, and so is this one right here. This is newer equipment. I bet you anything customers are leaving the doors open, and the reason why I say that is when you come over here, I just walked in, they just opened. This door is propped open like that. Walk-in freezer. So that's probably gonna be iced up too. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go shut the condensing unit off. We obviously got to get to the bottom of that motor, but then we got to figure out why it's iced up. I doubt that the motor would cause both the coils to ice up like that, but we'll see. I bet you they're leaving doors open would be my thought. But I'm gonna turn off the condensing unit, let just the fans run while I'm doing that, and then get all my hoses and everything to get this thing fully defrosted. All right, my condensing unit's right here. Not gonna tell you much. The sight glass is flashing, but the coils are iced up, so you can't trust what the sight glass says when you have iced up evaporator coils. You have to defrost it first and then attack the problem after. So kill that guy, and then we'll figure out what's up. Condenser coil's not too bad. This is the one, yeah, again, I did this one back in April of 21 was the install on this equipment. So all right, I got this coil turned off. We're gonna disassemble it. We have two evaporator coils. We have this one, which is the primary, and we have that one, which is the secondary, okay? This one has the temperature controller, and this one right here controls a solenoid valve in this coil and in that coil. And then we have wiring running from this temperature controller over to that one that energizes the solenoid coil and turns the fans onto high speed and low speed. These fans cycle on high and low depending on when it's calling for cooling. It's an energy saving feature, but it can also be problematic when it comes to defrosting, because every time it goes into defrost, it only runs them on low speed. All right, so I'm leaving that one running while we're working on this one. It's a separate breaker. That way that one can kind of air defrost while I'm defrosting this one with water. You always want to judge the ice by the frost pattern, okay? To me, this looks like it's been defrosting, but it hasn't been defrosting long enough because of a serious freeze up. Now, I have a feeling this has to do with the temperature controller, which has the defrost built in, and it's probably not defrosting enough. Now, that's not saying anything bad about the control, because these things are never meant to be iced up this much. This is caused by either it continually running and running and running and running, or the evaporator being completely plugged up and dirty. I have a feeling, again, that they're leaving doors open, which is a common problem here. So we're gonna get this defrost, but the point I wanted to make is you always wanna pay attention to how it's frozen up. And if you're calling to get tech support and things like that, always let the person you're calling know, you know, looks like it's 3/4 of the way down the coil or something like that, okay? My thought is that this unit goes into defrost, it starts defrosting, but then it doesn't run long enough, so it continues to turn on and then just keep freezing. So we'll see. I'm using hot water. I was lucky to have it. I personally find that heat guns and torches can potentially damage the system by melting wires and things like that, and I find that hot water is the fastest thing to melt ice. You just gotta watch to make sure it doesn't overflow the drain pan. You don't just keep going and making a mess inside the box unless that's what the customer wants. So I start at the top and just slowly defrost from the top. I'm not worried about the bottom yet, because the hot water from the top is gonna roll down, right? So we're gonna try to be as efficient as possible, but then the drain pan's getting full, so we're gonna stop and let it catch up and drain, and then we'll start again. So it's a process, it takes time, but you just gotta give it that time and be thorough with it. A lot of people say that when they use water, they make the biggest messes in the world. There's ways you can mitigate those messes, okay? One of the biggest ways is I typically do not apply water to the back of the coil. I'm gonna do everything to the front of the coil. If it's just ice, the steam will actually make the ice off the back of the coil fall off. So you just keep applying towards the top, because that's where the majority of the ice is, and I'm watching that drain pan. As soon as the drain pan fills up, because I'm putting more water than the drain can drain out, you know, faster, then we stop, okay? But I'm gonna show you guys, like, I'm not gonna get to the back of this coil with water, but I'll show you the back of it. You can see that it is frozen up, okay? So we're just gonna keep applying it, and in a little while, all of a sudden, a big chunk will fall off the back. And this is what I'm talking about. It'll just fall off as a chunk. Then I'll take that ice, throw it in the drain pan, and then just melt it and let it go down the drain. Sometimes you can grab a bucket or something, you know? It's usually not a big deal. But so this side is completely defrosted. Now we're gonna start on this side. All right, this one just fell off, and I just started on this one, and then literally everything fell off as one giant chunk because it was just sitting there thawing out, you know, as I was doing this. So you don't need to make a big mess in here. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of ice, you know, here and there. We're gonna try to pick up most of it. Then you always have to get into the expansion valve section and the electrical section, and you need to make sure there's no ice buildup in there too. All the ice has to be gone, or you're defeating the purpose of what you're doing, and it'll be coming back tomorrow. Understanding how your customers use the equipment is so important. So I'm standing in here, and these guys just brought in piping hot food that just came out of the oven, and they're using the box to cool it. When I sized this equipment, I oversized it for that reason, okay? Now you can get super engineer techie and figure out the exact amount, but we just basically oversized accordingly, you know. I don't remember what my number was. I think I went 10% over what the actual load was, and it's to compensate for them bringing hot food into this box. So we got the coil all completely done, the other side put together. I'm just finishing up the expansion valve section now. So that's very interesting. The problem's actually with the low speed on the motor, and it's causing it not to work. There's something going on there because I wired it up without hooking up the low speed, and it's running at full blast. We'll let it run for a bit and see if it dies out. I may not have to change the motor temporarily. All right, so that's my 2-speed relay right there, that black relay. And the red wire is the low speed. So the thermostat, the way it's wired, the thermostat gives a call and energizes the relay. That's actually a normally closed relay. But when the thermostat calls, it opens and then sends it to low speed. And you can actually see it right here. So there's your contacts and there's your relay, and the relay is powered by the thermostat. So when it gets a call for cool, the relay energizes and it opens the contacts. It breaks the red wire. So if you want to disable 2-speed on these, all you have to do is remove the red wire and isolate it, and or not hook up the red wire to the motor, and you can temporarily bypass it. So we're still going to order the OEM motor, but for now we're going to leave it into full speed and just disconnect the red wire on both coils, because the other motor seems to be working for now. So the entire time I was defrosting the other coil, I had this one running with no refrigeration, so it was partially defrosting it. Now this one was iced up the same way as the other one. It had a big block, you know, where it looked like it had been defrosting itself. So we're going to go ahead and get this guy taken care of real quick, and also isolated, like I said earlier, the high speed for the fans right here, so that way these will run on high speed too. So all right, we're gonna get this guy defrosted. Now this was all underneath here, and remember I said that when I defrosted, the ice falls off. I don't want it to start knocking over wine bottles, so carefully moved all that stuff, and then now we're gonna finish defrosting this guy. Something else the customer informed me is that, see, originally when I called, they said they just noticed the fan motor being bad. Well, on the other coil, I think it's been bad for a very long time. Look at the thickness of this ice, and you can tell that it had been thawing and then refreezing and thawing and refreezing. But it could be that other fan motor that was not working, that was the problem. I was assuming because it had just happened, I was like, nah, that, you know, I doubt that would cause it to ice up. But in further talking to them, it's been like that for a while. So the fan motor could be the cause, but we're not just gonna stop there. We're gonna keep going, trying to figure out the root cause of this problem. I have a feeling it's gonna be the door too, but we'll see. All right, we are all done defrosting it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn the condensing unit on. I still gotta clean up messes and everything, but I want the system coming down in temperature while I'm doing things. So we're trying to multitask and trying to make the best of our time. So back up and running, and then I'll get downstairs, clean up the hoses, clean up the box, and then hopefully it'll start dropping in temp, and then we'll evaluate the system. All right, so the system's been running for a little bit. 42 degrees return air temperature, and the temperature controller says 42 degrees also. The next thing we want to do, we're trying to wait for it to come down to temp to make sure that it satisfies and stuff. We may or may not see that, but we want to see, we're going to hold down the enter button. We want to see what it's set at. T5 is the set point, 35 degrees. In a perfect world, you want to maintain 35, well, let me explain this, hold on. So 35 degrees, we're actually going to change that, okay? So we're going to change it to 37. Hold down the enter and I'll explain everything right now. Differential is 3. So 35 degrees, it's going to come down to 35, and it's not going to turn on until 38, the end of 38. Then it's going to come down to 35, turn back on at 38. All right, so I adjusted the temperature from 35 up to 37. So now it's going to come up to 38, 39, 40, and then turn on. Now, I don't like raising it that high, but with the customer that I feel is leaving the door open consistently, I feel like this is something we're going to have to do. Compressor starts per hour, none. Defrost per day, 6. We're going to change that to 8 because I feel like they're really being problematic with this. And then defrost time, 15 minutes. We're actually going to change it to 20 minutes. Oops, wrong button. Back. Defrost time, we're going to change it to 20 minutes. Hold that down. Everything else is alarmed, so we don't need to worry about that stuff, okay? So we're going to let the box satisfy, make sure it actually turns off where it's supposed to. At least that's the plan, but the product in here is pretty warm, so it might take a while. So we're going to let it run for a little bit longer and see what happens. All right, we are running. I'm going to show you guys all the numbers here in a second. We're running a clear sight glass, which is an absolute must. Bottom line, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. The system has a receiver and it has expansion valves. That sight glass has to be clear. Period. I can't stress that enough. Okay, now a really important thing to understand though is that sight glass is just a window into the system at the point that it's installed. In a perfect world, you'll have a sight glass installed literally before the expansion valve, okay, on the liquid line, because that's going to tell you that you literally have a clear solid column of liquid going to the expansion valve, okay? But for practicality, a lot of times sight glasses are installed on the roof, okay? There's always potential that there could be a restriction after that sight glass. There could be a pinch in the liquid line. There could be, who knows, okay? So just understand that. Sight glasses are extremely important in refrigeration, and if someone's telling you that you don't need a sight glass in refrigeration when you have expansion valves and receivers, you need to do some research, because you need to have a clear solid column of liquid. You do not charge a refrigeration system with an expansion valve to superheat or subcooling, okay? Oftentimes on legacy systems, older systems, subcooling was a good metric to tell you if you have a gross overcharge, but other than that, with the receiver, it was complicated to use subcooling. Now, on newer systems, like this is a new Department of Energy AWEF compliant refrigeration unit, it has a subcooler added to the system. So as the refrigerant comes out of the condenser, it goes into the receiver, comes out of the receiver, goes back into the condenser, okay? Then comes out of the condenser, goes through the liquid line filter dryer, then downstairs. And they do that to get extra subcooling. Normally on a refrigeration system, you can't really measure subcooling very well. And I'll take you over here and show you guys, okay, that on these newer systems, you can measure subcooling. Look, we have 11 degrees subcooling. That's crazy to see that on systems previous to these new DOE compliant AWEF condensing units, all right? And I am checking on the inlet of the liquid line filter dryer, so it's the line going down, okay? Before, if you just saw any subcooling or you saw an extremely high subcooling, that would mean something. But with that being said, still need to have a clear sight glass, okay? So, my box temperature, let's get to that, okay? This is 448A. I'm not really worried about targets right now, okay? I guess I should get an outside air temperature, but we have a 20 degree evaporator TD right now. My box temperature is 45 degrees. Now, a few minutes ago, it was 42, so I bet you they got the door propped open right now. Now, we're gonna go do a test right now, okay? And we're gonna check the evaporator superheat. But we have multiple evaporators. So what I have lined up here, evaporator 1 has 11.6 degrees, evaporator 2 has 11.6, and the compressor has 27 degrees superheat, okay? Sometimes you need to sacrifice evaporator superheat to satisfy compressor superheat, but I'm not too worried about this. This looks pretty darn good to me. With Measure Quick, you're able to do a multiple superheat test. So I have one suction pressure port downstairs, and then I have 3 temperature clamps, 2 downstairs, 1 upstairs. So we're able to get multi superheats on that, okay? Now the other thing I do want to do is check my outdoor ambient temperature just to see where we're at, but I'm happy with these numbers. This system is doing everything that I believe it can do. Of course, you know, we could always adjust the superheat a little bit lower, but I'm not too worried about it. As the valves are opening and closing, it's kind of fluctuating, and as it actually gets closer to set point, we're going to be a little bit better. I've seen the superheat as low as 9.8 degrees while I've been watching it today, so I'm not going to try adjusting it. If we had an electronic expansion valve, we could probably try to bring that superheat down a little bit more. But when you have thermostatic expansion valves, you try to go a little conservative, because thermostatic expansion valves can have high swings, open, close, and you could flood out the compressor. I mean, again, it's not as critical, but still, okay? So we're gonna leave it where it is for the evaporator superheat measurement, and that should be, I might have even made some labels right here. No, I didn't write it down, but that sounds about what it was when I started this system up, because I remember starting this up. So you can see I started it up on 4/28/21. So we definitely are going to be getting a new evaporator fan motor, and it should be under warranty through the OEM manufacturer, but my labor is not, because we passed our 90 days labor warranty. So yeah, so there we go, we're hitting 10 degrees on the superheat. So we're going to let the system stabilize, run a little bit longer. You typically don't want to make superheat adjustments till you're really close to box temperature. It's marginal. I honestly would like to see it at 40 degrees before you start adjusting the valve. But I'm pretty confident we're looking pretty good so far. It's frustrating. I went downstairs and they had the door propped open like I thought. So I just got on one of the cooks because they prop it open because, oh, I'm going in and out. I don't care. You shut the door every time you go in and out. And, you know, that's an inconvenience to them. And, like, you know, to be fair, they're so short-staffed right now. These guys are just stressed to the max. But it's still frustrating on my part because it's Saturday, October 9th. It's currently 2:03 p.m. in the afternoon. You know, I'm here on a Saturday, and again, that's the life of a refrigeration guy, but I'd rather be home right now. Instead, I'm babysitting a walk-in cooler, trying to figure out why it iced up. And at this point, to be honest with you, with the way they're leaving the door open, I'm about ready to just leave and tell them that I'll come back later, because I really want to be done with this, and I don't want to have to come back, but I guess I'm going to come back to change the fan motor anyways. But it's just frustrating, you know, when people leave a dang door open and they're just so ignorant to the fact of what that can do to the system. I did put my outdoor air probe on there. So what is it? We're right about at our target our target outdoor air temp, you know, roughly. Let's see, our condenser TD is 24 degrees. Where's that? I must have passed the outdoor air temp. I wasn't paying attention. Should be on the next screen. There you go. So it's 80 degrees outside right now. So just gonna let it run for a little bit longer. So the unit actually went into a defrost. So I think you can pop it out by holding down the two buttons. I think. Yeah, there we go. So I popped it out of defrost. It's still, that's not 45 in here. It's like 42, but it'll come down here in just a second. But yeah, I'm gonna get out of here because they just keep opening this door. We'll come back and we'll follow up when we change this evaporator fan motor. All right, I'm back today. It's just been a day. Luckily, my local supply house had the OEM motor in stock. So we're gonna slap it in on this one right here. And then we also gotta turn it back to the 2-speed function, because remember I disconnected that. So we're gonna do that real quick. Shouldn't take long at all. And good sign, nothing's iced up. So, all right, so we're wired back in. We run on low speed because the temperature controller's not calling yet. I set them both back up to have the 2-speed fans. And then as soon as this temperature controller calls, we should ramp up to high speed. So it just uses that relay, and whenever it gets a call for cooling, it breaks the leg to that red wire, breaks the power to the red wire, and it runs up to high speed. So let's give it a sec. While we're waiting, you can see all that hot food they just brought in here. That's something we have to be worried about when it comes to these walk-ins, and you have to make sure stuff is sized accordingly. All right, high speed, boom, boom, boom. Everything's on high speed now. So everything's operating properly. They are running higher in temperature now because I adjusted the temperature settings from 35 to 37, so it's going to maintain right around 40 degrees in the box now instead of 37, 36 degrees, or 30, well actually 35, 36. So it was maintaining 38 before, but now we're going to maintain 40. But we have to do that if they're constantly leaving the door open. That's going to be it on this one. We're going to wrap it up. They should be good to go. You know, again, it's okay to be frustrated, right? I bring this up, and I know I get pushback from it. People saying that I shouldn't be frustrated, that I'm going out on an overtime service call. I'm still frustrated, okay? I'm human. I'm thankful, right? But at the same time, it's okay. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I'm okay with this. Like, you know, I still get frustrated. Now, I don't vent it to the customer. I'm polite to the customer and nice to the customer, but it's still frustrating. I do let them know, though, like, hey, like, you know, immediately when I see walk-in doors left open, walk-in freezer doors and stuff, I go grab the management and grab cooks and whoever. Like, guys, you can't do this, you know? And then I express to them, this is my time. You know, I'm here for emergencies, but when it can be things that could have been prevented, it makes me frustrated. You know, and I had a very long discussion with the general manager of this location because he wasn't there on the Saturday, but he was there when I went back on Monday or whatever. And I had a discussion with him like, look, I get it. I know things are crazy right now. These restaurants are just, it's crazy, you know, and they have to pick their battles with the employees because they're just thankful that they have any, because most of them don't. And if you guys don't already know this, this is how this is going right now. There's a lot of restaurants that don't get to open at all, and they constantly have to stay shut or shut down or only serve, you know, takeout and things like that because they just don't have staff. So it's nuts right now. So they're picking their battles when it comes to this stuff. Okay. But, I went through everything that I could. I found the unit to be frozen up, but as I was waiting for it to come down to temperature, I said in the video, hey, look, the temp went up like 4 degrees. I bet you the door's open. I went downstairs and that door was wide open. I had a conversation with the cook because he's like, oh, well, I'm going in and out with these trays. And I was like, then shut the door every time you go in and out. Like, stop it, you know? It's annoying, and this is what's causing these problems. And the customer changing protocols, right? When they built this building, they were not bringing hot food into this box. This is something new. Okay. This is a new trend that they started to do. Now, luckily from the beginning, this equipment was oversized, but still, okay, you have to be careful because you don't want to oversize equipment too much because that messes with the operation of the box. But at the same time, if you know they're going to be doing things like having a lot of people in there, you know, you have to account for that stuff. And you can get nitty gritty with the engineering calculations. You know, if you do a load calculation, most of the advanced load calculation programs out there will ask you how many lights are in the box, what's the infiltration rate, how many times is the door being opened, how many people are in there on average, do they drive forklifts in there, do they drive cars in there? I mean, that stuff happens in the industrial side, and you have to account for it. Okay. So, but when I do size, what I typically will do is I'll take the load and then I'll add 10%, or I'll set it up for a heavy duty load calculation and just kind of, I don't ever just throw 10% on it. I look at it and I see, okay, how is this going to change? You know, if I go up 10%, is that going to change a coil size? What's it, you know, so I play with the numbers that way and just kind of, but you don't want to oversize equipment like dramatically because then it's not going to get proper compressor cooling. If you have massively oversized equipment, then it's going to have short cycles. It's not going to run very long. You know, depending on what the product is in the box, it might, you know, not dehumidify. You know, there could be all kinds of different problems that are associated with it. You know, mismatched equipment. If you have a really big condensing unit and a really small evaporator, you might not get proper compressor cooling, different things like that. So sizing your equipment is very, very important. Okay. I just recently discovered that Heatcraft Refrigeration actually has an app that has a load calculation software. I didn't know they had an app. I knew you can go online and look it up, but it's called the Hub, I think. If you download the Hub by Heatcraft, you can actually, I think you have to sign in or something, but you can actually do a load calculation. So that's really cool. It makes it easier for us technicians, you know, because if we find a problematic box, boom, do a load calculation real quick. Just solve the problem. Is it oversized, undersized? Oh, wow, this is severely undersized. I'm not going to waste my time today, you know? So that's really neat to have that stuff at our fingertips. Every day, there's something new coming out in our trade that's making our jobs easier and easier. Sometimes it's making it harder, but for the most part, the new technologies that's coming out is making things easier. So that's really cool, guys. But it's important that
you know, even though I'm frustrated, even though we're going through this equipment on a Saturday, I still take the time to not make a giant mess in the box. You know, sometimes it calls for a mess. Sometimes if it's a ceiling mounted coil, you got to do what you got to do, but I still communicate with management. I don't just make it and leave. I let them know, hey, this is going to make a mess. Do you want to cover anything up? Do you want me? And I'll usually offer too. Do you want me to clean it up? I'm totally willing to clean up my messes. Most of the time I'll say, hey, would you like me to clean up this mess that I made? Or do you want one of your cooks to do it? And most of the time they want the cooks to do it because they cost a lot less than me. But if they ever told me, no, I want you to clean, okay, no problem. I'll squeegee that stuff up. I'll get a mop out. I'll dry it. I'll do whatever they want. I'm getting paid, you know? So I'm still courteous. I still am aware and observant of what's going on. You know, I'm paying attention to their habits as they're going in and out of the box. All of that stuff makes you a better technician. It makes you more aware of the situation and gives you a better idea what might be going on. Okay. Because every manager out there, when you talk to them, I think they're leaving the door open. Oh, we don't leave the doors open. Oh, you don't? Okay, cool. Walk with me real quick. Let me show you something. You know, walk over there. Boom. Doors wide open. Oh, you know, like sometimes they're oblivious to what's going on because these managers, again, sometimes they're understaffed restaurants and they don't even know what's going on in the back of the kitchen, you know? And I'll bring this up to them. Oh, yeah. You know, they usually go quiet when they see the door wide open. And I always make a point too, to grab my pocket knife, cut off the bungee cords, cut off whatever's tying the doors open, cut it off right in front of them and say, these are not allowed. You make sure they don't do these, you know? And they're usually like, okay, yeah, good idea. All right. So we are as thorough as possible when we're going through this equipment. Now I went back in, put in the new evaporator fan motor, set it back up for the 2-speed option. Now I did make a comment that the 2-speed option can sometimes be problematic. Okay. Because the way that these coils are set up is whenever the thermostat gives a call for cooling, it puts the unit into full speed, right? And whenever the thermostat satisfies, it takes the unit and slows down the evaporator fan motors. Now, this particular situation, the thermostat is the defrost clock. So whenever it's in defrost, it's on low speed, which doesn't really make sense. It should be on high speed. So I have run into some problems with this, but I don't like to jump to conclusions. So I usually give it 1 to 2 shots. So I had a freeze up situation. I went ahead and put the system back to OEM specs. It's back to operation. I adjusted the temperature a little bit warmer. If I have consistent freezing up problems, then I'll probably explore the option of eliminating that 2-speed evaporator fan motor. They are going to lose a little bit of energy conservation, efficiency, whatever you want to say when I do that, but that savings in energy is probably going to be outweighed by my repair costs of constantly having to come out on overtime and charging a crap ton of money to defrost a coil. Now, if that's what caused it, see, I don't think that's the cause of this situation. I think it was because they left a door open. I think the fan wasn't helping, but I don't think the fan was the deliberate cause, or I mean the ultimate cause of it icing up. So try to do our best. That's the best. That's the best that I can do, is just try to be as good as possible. Try to be observant, try to pay attention to the equipment, and get it back and operational. Okay. I really appreciate you making it to the end of the video. Thank you so very much. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Leave me a comment down in the bottom. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Tell me what you think about the video. Okay. If you haven't already, please consider checking out my website, hvacrvideos.com. I have merchandise available on there. We got the hats, the shirts. It's a great way to support the channel. We got cuffed beanies, non-cuffed beanies, all available on there. You give my wife something to do because she usually comes in here during the week and ships out all the merchandise and stuff. So your guys's continuing support, whether it be comments, likes, views, buying merch, any of that stuff is much appreciated. Okay. But remember, I'm going to keep making these videos no matter if you guys support the channel financially or if you just watch the channel. I love sharing the little bit of knowledge that I have, and I'm going to continue doing it. So thank you so very much. And we will catch you on the next one. Okay.